40 years ago in May, it was the month of I don't give an F. We're going to be going over four movies where the main character, whether it be a robot, a cop, a Top Gun pilot, just did not give an F. So, starting off, turning 40 this month, we have one of my all time favorite movies, and that is Short Circuit. The Short Circuit franchise, which is only two movies per se, was actually one of my favorite movie franchises growing up. The first one, which came out in May of '86, I'm not too familiar with this one. I didn't watch this as many times as I watched the second one. The second one is really high on my list. But just to kind of give you a rundown what the basic plot of Short Circuit was. So what this movie's about is about a robot that gains sentient life when it gets struck by lightning. Out of fear of being reprogrammed, number five escapes and is rescued by Stephanie Speck, who is played by the famous 80s icon Ali Sheedy, who ends up rescuing him and teaching him about life, about what life means and stuff like that. It's like a very touching moment. He learns how to dance. Like he learns basically the meaning of life in a sense. Well, so what ends up happening, Stephanie, with the help of number five, has to go and actually convince the creator of the robot, Dr. Crosby, who played by 80s icon The Goot. Yep, Steve Guttenberg himself from Police Academy, plays the scientist who created number five. And she has to end up convincing him that Johnny Five is alive. And then from there, these two are basically on the run. Because, yeah, they have the government after them, the corporations after them, because this robot should not exist. It needs to be decommissioned, needs to be reprogrammed, and then you figure out why he grew sentience. So, yeah, so that's the basic outline plot storyline of Short Circuit. So, this movie has a lot going for it. Some of the special effects, the actual robotics created for this movie are amazing. Just the way they were able to use kind of robotics to create the emotions from the eyes and everything of Johnny Five, which is pretty cool to think about, is that they had to have a reason for every aspect. So like with Johnny Five's like eyebrows and everything like that, those had to be specific as to why they would be there. With eyes being telescopic like cameras and stuff like that, of course you would need little like kind of shutters or hinges, to kind of block out the sun and stuff like that. So thus he has eyebrows. It's really cool. It's very fascinating when you learn more about what this robot entailed and their design and how this robot's gone on to actually play an important role in like robotics in the early 80s. But this movie also has some controversy behind it, and that's the casting of Fisher Stevens as the scientist Dr. Ben, who is actually an Indian character, which is, problematic in its own case because Fisher Stevens is not an Indian actor. So Fisher Stevens does explain what happened and why this character made this massive transformation. And it's so wrong in many ways because what ended up happening was Fisher Stevens was originally hired to play the character of Dr. Ben, and Dr. Ben's character in the original script was a Caucasian and a scientist. But eventually, Fisher Stevens was actually fired from the movie in a sense, or was replaced by Bronson Pinchot. So Bronson was actually hired on to play the character, but he decided to leave the project to pursue another career as Balky in Perfect Strangers. So Balky basically left the project, and the studio actually loved the weird foreign accent that he was giving Dr. Ben. And so they convinced Fisher Stevens to come back to the role and actually do an Indian accent, to put on a brown face in a sense. So problematic in that sense. But you know what? The character has lived on. And it's so crazy to think that even though it was problematic in the first movie, they still went forward with it in the second movie too. So he plays the same character in the second movie. But I digress on that one. So with that being said, Short Circuit turns 40 this year. Next up is a movie that's also one of my favorites, and a movie I probably watched when I was way too young, and that is Poltergeist 2, The Other Side. I'm actually a big fan of the original Poltergeist movie, and it has all the controversy too, like who directed the movie? Was it Steven Spielberg? Was it Toby Hooper? We may never know. But Poltergeist 2 was actually a movie that was, Spielberg left the project, Toby Hooper's not part of this project. A few years later, they kind of come back together to make the second movie. And man, this movie has some complications with it, which you could say. Anyway, let me just kind of give you a brief summary of the movie. So, a year has passed since the Freeling family escaped the horrible chaos that happened in the first movie. and now they're actually living with Diane, the wife's mother. And this family is pretty much in disarray. The daughter's no longer there, and I'll get into a reason why she's not in this movie. Craig T. Nelson is no longer a realtor. He's now a vacuum cleaner salesman. So that's causing a lot of drama, tension in the family. They're living with his mother-in-law. So they have that drama. And of course, the beast decides to return, this time taking on the form of Reverend Cain. Yes, and you know what? Reverend Cain is a creepy character. I don't know. You've probably seen pictures of Reverend Cain, and he's scary. He is scary looking. This man, he's coming in through the door. Reverend Cain's character is essentially a priest. He was essentially the leader of a cult that was like an apocalyptic cult. Led his whole congregation to a cave where they all eventually died out. But yeah, evil man, evil character, very menacing, dark. He's there to find Carol Ann and take her back because, hey, the mom, Diane, took her away from him in the first movie. So we got that going on. We also have Taylor, who is a Native American shaman who is there to help the family like deal with fighting the beast. And we also got Tangina, who, from the original one. Don't go to the light, Carol Ann. Don't go to the light. I I just did a really bad impression of that. I do apologize. Carol Ann, don't go to the light, Carol Ann. Oh, I'm just gonna keep doing it over and over again. Yeah, but basically with this movie, they end up having to go back to the original home and fight the beast there. Yeah, this movie has some amazing special effects. The monster designs for this movie were actually created by the German artist H.R. Geiger. And you probably know that name because he is the guy who created the xenomorphs for the Alien movies. So, yeah, he actually helped design some of the monsters like the Beast. Got some really cool special effects in this movie. So, another fun facts about the movie was originally going to be shot for 3D. And you can kind of see some scenes that were actually shot with the 3D intentions. But during the middle of the production, they realized the 3D fad was now gone, so they reverted back to not shooting it in 3D, which led to some scenes having that kind of a 3D feel to it and some not. But in addition, this movie is also responsible for many other rumors that have plagued the Poltergeist franchise for years. Because this movie is considered cursed. And the curse all begins with all the way back to the first movie when they actually used real skeletons, and that's the pool scene. So there were actual real skeletons in there. And the rumors are that because they used the real skeletons, this movie has been cursed. So, what are some crazy stuff that have happened that are tied to this movie? The daughter from the first movie actually didn't appear in this one because she was actually unalived by her boyfriend at the time. And that actually happened just right after the premiere of the first movie. So that's very tragic. In this movie, we had the actor who played Cain, Julian Beck, who actually eventually died from stomach cancer while in the middle of filming this movie, too. Will Sampson, who ends up playing Taylor, the Native American shaman, actually had to go on set during filming of this movie and perform some like exorcisms and cleansing rituals to help keep the evil spirits because a lot of the crew did not want to be on set while filming this movie. A really interesting thing about that is there's a rumor that on one day of shooting of this film, actually all the film footage for that day turned up on a black screen. Like it never actually recorded. And they actually lost a whole day worth of footage. And on that scene, apparently they were using real cadavers while filming that scene. So, yeah, make that as you will. That's very creepy. And unfortunately, Will Sampson did pass away not too long after this movie came out from complications with some kind of surgery. And then, of course, you have the biggest death, the girl who played Carol Ann, Heather Rourke, who actually passed away while filming the third movie in the franchise. So this movie series is cursed, and that's why after they made the third one, this franchise was never touched again until the reboot, that godfor awful reboot that came out years later. This was my first foray into the Poltergeist franchise, and I watched this one before I ever saw the first one. And that scene where Craig T. Nelson is drinking the tequila with the worm in it, and worm is vomiting the worm out, freaked me out. That creature scares me to this day. You know what? Yeah, I need an action figure of that figure because that would look pretty cool. All right, so that is Poltergeist 2, The Other Side. So also turning 40 this month, it's Cobra. You probably are thinking, oh, it's a Karate Kid movie. No, Cobra is not a Karate Kid movie. Cobra is a Sylvester Stallone movie where he plays a lieutenant who is tough as nails cop who doesn't give a shit about anybody else, and he's gonna come in and cause mayhem. Yep, that is Lieutenant Cobra, which I know that's his nickname, but it's pretty cool. I'm gonna say. Anyways, to give you a summary of what the movie's about, it's about a murderous cult leader and his cult family, I guess you can say, who are out there on a killing rampage. And it's kind of based on the Charlie Manson family in a sense. So this cult leader basically ends up their philosophy is get rid of the weak, let the strong survive kind of thing. They're like a Darwinism type of cult, I guess you could say. Anyways, so there's a witness to one of the crimes that happens in the movie, and it's up to Lieutenant Cobra to go in and protect her and keep her safe. And of course, you just get 80s machismo, 80s like man's man type of movie, explosions, huge body count, you name it. This movie does have it. It is peak 80s action movie. And you know what? I remember seeing this at least once when I was younger. I remember having a good time, but I've never gone back and actually checked out this movie since I've seen it when I was way younger. Again, probably when I was way too young to actually watch this movie. The fun facts about this movie is that this movie was actually a script for Beverly Hills Cop, if you can believe that. So, kind of back you up, because it's not technically, but it is. So, originally, Sylvester Stallone was cast as Axel Foley for Beverly Hills Cop. He wanted to take a rewrite the script. He wrote his own version of the script, and that is Cobra. And when he brought it to the studio, he said, "Hey, this is my idea for the script." They said, "No way. This is a comedy that is way too serious and not a comedy like." So eventually, Sylvester parted ways with the studio. They hired Eddie Murphy, and the rest is history on that end. Well, with the new script, Sylvester Stallone rewrote it, fixed it, made it its own movie, and thus was born Cobra. And what's very interesting about this too is that Cobra is kind of loosely based on a book too, a book by Paula Gosling called either Fair Game, if you're very familiar with it, and that was also made into another movie that starred Richard Gere, and I think Brooke Shields. I think that's who else is in that one too, or by its other name, A Running Duck, which is a stupid title for a book. And I'm probably gonna anger a lot of people, but yes, that sounds really dumb. What is really crazy about this movie has never had a sequel made. However, this movie only had a $25 million budget for that time period, but it ended up making about $160 million. They made a good amount of money on this film. It was kind of a hit. It has a cult following to it. Audience scores is pretty good for this movie, whereas critic scores is really bad. Wasn't a huge hit with the critics. And you'll know why if you've ever seen this movie. But the true cult followers of this movie really do enjoy it. And there's also a video game of this movie. If you can believe that, they actually made a video game of this movie for a system that you guys will be familiar with is the ZX Spectrum. I know you all know what that is. How about the Amstrad CPC? No? How about the Commodore 64? There you go. Yes. My fans out there, you do know what the Commodore 64 is. So yep, this is a video game that came out for the Commodore 64. And you know what? I kind of remember this game playing it when I was way younger. Um, but it's pretty much it's just a normal punch as you go, scrolling side screen quest type of game. I'll put up a screenshot here of what the gameplay kind of looked like. So that is Cobra from 1986. And last but not least, a movie that we just got our first sequel to after 30 some years. Top Gun came out in May of 1986. Now here's a movie that, you know what? I'm actually surprised we didn't get more Top Gun movies after this one came out. I did find some research that there were plans of making other Top Gun movies, but Tom Cruise didn't want to do it. He was in the phase where he wasn't making sequels to his movies. It's one and done. So what is Top Gun? So Top Gun is actually based on the Top Gun Naval Fighter Weapons School. And we have this hotshot pilot, Maverick, played by Tom Cruise, and his best friend Goose, played by Anthony Edwards. Dr. Green from ER. And these two basically are sent to this military school to show off and, but, he's a hotshot pilot. He believes he does everything right. Very Hal Jordan-esque from Green Lanterns, if you ask me. Anyway, so his character basically, his attitude, his behavior basically puts him at odds with other pilots, such as Iceman, played by the great and late Val Kilmer, and some of the other commanding officers. So they have that going on. We got our love stories going on where the bartender and the teacher for the flight school who ends up falling in love with Tom Cruise's character, Maverick. We also have the whole story with Meg Ryan and Anthony Edwards' character, and that whole love story there. But man, this movie is tense. It's really great and has a pretty great soundtrack, if you ask me. This is a movie that when you do put it on, you will get sucked into it. You will enjoy every minute of it. You may even go buy the soundtrack because you want to hear Kenny Loggins' version of Danger Zone. But yeah, this movie has an Oscar-winning song in it. It would take my breath away, performed by Berlin. So this movie has everything going for it. Tony Scott directed the movie. We had Jerry Bruckheimer behind it by producing it. Man, this was like peak 80s right here, action movie. So what I'll say about Top Gun, let's kind of go into some of the fun facts about this one. Like during the filming of this movie, Tom Cruise was noted as to be very antisocial, kind of sat back from the rest of the group to kind of play off on that character that has cocky like attitude and stuff like that. So he was able to perform that. Very method acting in that sense. Fun fact that Tom Cruise never rode a motorcycle till this movie. Could you believe that? That's interesting. The Top Gun house, the one that's in this movie, is actually still there. And it's actually been moved to Oceanside in California. So if you're out on Oceanside, you can actually go visit the Top Gun house. There's a big old plaque on it that says the Top Gun house on it. When this movie came out, the Navy actually did something kind of interesting. They actually put recruitment tables outside of the movie theaters after people were walking out of this movie. And the Navy was known to have seen about a 500% increase in recruitments after this movie came out. And you can tell why. This movie made this look really fun, made it look really exciting. The movie's pretty much military propaganda in that sense. And last but not least, this movie soundtrack did go platinum 9 times. Can you believe that? That's just crazy to think about. A soundtrack going platinum 9 times. And it is, like I said, it's very surprising we didn't get a sequel sooner. But heck, 36 years later, we did get Top Gun Maverick. And that's a pretty good sequel, if you ask me. And it broke box office numbers. So, those are 4 movies that are turning 40 this month. What was your favorite movie? What are some other movies I may have missed that are turning 40 this May? Let me know in the comment section down below. And until next time, remember to hit the like, the subscribe, the notification bell. That way you're notified every time a new video is posted. And until next time, this is JD with the Figgy Pop Culture channel.